Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you guys are having a good day. We're back here at the ski village and today we're actually going to do some stuff here, but it's not going to be just working on the mountains themselves. As you can see, I've done a little bit more work on those and they're all looking pretty spiffy. I've started on this one down here, which is a little bit smaller than the other ones, but I think it's going to be nice to have all of this stuff figured out and then start planning the ski route. But before we do that, I have a bit of a conundrum here because, of course, I want to be able to make a ski lift to be able to transport passengers to the top of these mountains so they can make their way down on skis or boats, as it happens to be in Minecraft, because I don't think we're going to really be able to implement any kind of skiing feature in this world. But still, I have an idea for a ski lift. The problem being that it's not going to be a diagonal one that takes you up the side of the mountain. We're probably going to build an aesthetic ski lift, a ski lift that will look like a ski lift from the real world, but unfortunately it's not going to have the functionality of a ski lift because it's really difficult to make redstone work the way you want it to, especially if you're using flying machines and especially if you want those flying machines to go diagonally. Unfortunately, it's not really very easy to make a diagonal flying machine. If it is even possible, it is beyond my means. I am but a humble man who is not very good at redstone, and so I have decided that it's going to be a better idea to work on a simple up and down elevator inside the mountain itself. And this is where we can take things a little bit more Minecrafty and a little bit more fantastical, because of course in the real world it is incredibly unlikely you would find a ski lift buried inside of a mountain that would take you vertically up to the top of a ski slope. But of course this is Minecraft and we can start using our imagination where it suits us and where the redstone will not really allow us to do anything a bit more realistic. So what we're going to do is create a tunnel into a central part of the mountain where we are going to make a vertical up and down slime block and honey block elevator. And the reason for slime blocks and honey blocks both being involved here is because we want to make this elevator a little bit wider. We want to have it be something that looks like a sizable platform that could carry a decent amount of skiers. While we could obviously make an individual transport, we're only in a single player world here, we could just make it a bubble column leading to the top of the world or something like that. I feel like making something a little bit more mechanical. It sort of makes sense for the technology of the area, if you like. And so today I thought, because we haven't really done anything like this in the series before as well, it would be fun to make ourselves a slime block elevator to the top of this mountain here where the ski route is probably going to start. Of course, that's going to require me to make sure I have the right redstone components, and as you can see, I've been going through a lot of shulker boxes of stone and dirt making these mountains here, so we'll have to clear out my inventory a little bit as well. Looks like we've got a decent amount of slime blocks, pistons, observers, that kind of thing. I think we should be okay to make a straightforward platform. Redstone lamps are also going to be essential here. We've got a little bit of redstone dust as well. Perfect. I think that should be everything we need. So I'll dump all of my shulker boxes and all of this spare stuff in here for now. This is a bit of a mess, but I'll get back to that later. And before we go into making the elevator itself, the main one that we're going to have up the center of the mountain here, I think it's important to discuss the intricacies of flying machines and give you guys a bit of a refresher course on what flying machines are. And we're going to use the car park for this because it's a nice flat testing ground that we can use. So I think we're going to pop down our redstone box here, and first of all we'll make a horizontal flying machine using slime blocks and sticky pistons. This is a nice easy design. We'll need some observers for this as well, and we should be able to construct it in the way we have done many of these things before. So this is your typical slime block flying machine. We have two sticky pistons facing in opposite directions, kind of diagonal from each other. Attached to each of the sticky piston heads we have a single slime block, and on top of those slime blocks we have observers facing outwards. And what those do is trigger the pistons to activate in a certain sequence, which pulls the entire contraption along. And because the observer and the sticky piston are all attached to faces of the slime block, they get brought along with it. We also can add arms to the sides of the slime blocks like so, usually with blocks attached to those as well, and that can perform a variety of different functions, either from concealing the slime blocks to actually carrying pistons and observers along with it, in the case of the ice farm that we built over there a little while ago. So if you want a bit of a refresher on those, then go ahead and check out that video. But if we activate one of these observers, the entire flying machine ends up moving at a reasonable rate until it hits an obstruction, something that it cannot push in addition to all of the other stuff it is carrying. In this case, it's an obsidian block, which makes sense because obsidian is a non-movable block. You can also use things like furnaces and droppers and stuff like that in Java Edition, as long as they don't interfere with the redstone components here, because those have inventories, and stuff with an inventory cannot be pushed in Java Edition. In Bedrock Edition, they can, so things get a little bit hazy, but also flying machines operate a little bit differently. So unfortunately, this is mainly going to be focused on the Java Edition as usual. Now, of course, these are two-way flying machines, so if I activate this observer on this side, that starts going in the opposite direction, once again, ends up hitting this obsidian block here. Now, the problem here is this is only a horizontal flying machine. It cannot really travel vertically, and if you try and assemble one of these in the same sort of orientation, but with the pistons oriented vertically, you're not going to always get the same results. Here is the same kind of contraption oriented vertically. So we have a piston facing down, a piston facing up, observers still pointing out towards the sides, and let's see if we can activate this thing now. Nope, doesn't look like it's really working, does it? We could try reorienting these observers so the inputs face directly into the slime blocks, meaning the slime blocks are going to be transmitting power to one of the adjacent pistons, but even that is not quite going to work the way we think. It doesn't work the other way around because the observers aren't able to transmit power to these pistons diagonally across a horizontal plane, only through a vertical plane, and now if we end up activating that, it just kind of breaks. So evidently vertical slime block flying machines have to be oriented a little bit differently, and through a little bit of creative testing, I've come up with a design that pretty much works. What we're going to do is place an observer facing downwards, like so, a slime block on top of that, and a piston facing downwards on top of that. So for now, the whole thing is going to look like this. Observer facing downwards, detecting whatever happens down here. Slime block on top of that. Piston facing downwards on top of that. And then adjacent to this, we're going to place a piston facing upwards, a slime block there, and an observer facing that way so that the power output is directed towards this piston here. I'm going to scaffold up a little bit and place an obsidian block further up just so we can block the movement of this thing, because once it gets going, it could potentially fly all the way to build height. And we'll place an obsidian block underneath here as well to make sure that the machine doesn't come back down and disturb the concrete powder and the thin dirt floor underneath that comprises the car park I have built here. So what's going to happen is this observer, once we remove the scaffolding, is going to start powering that slime block, which is going to power the piston adjacent to it, pushing the entire contraption upwards. When that observer gets moved, it's going to detect that it's looking at a different block, which is going to power the piston adjacent to that, which is also going to have been moved up by that slime block, and that's going to drag the rest of the contraption upwards with it. Observe. There we go, that seemed to work precisely as intended, and now when we end up doing something to that observer at the top there, it's just going to bring the whole contraption back down. For example, if I get up here with some more scaffolding and place some cobblestone in front of that, the entire contraption descends back on top of that obsidian block, and now we have a two-way vertical flying machine, which is a little bit differently oriented to the flying machines we're used to, but has the advantage of being a one block wide design, meaning that, in theory, we could tile this. Now, there are only 6 blocks used in this design. It's actually pretty compact, and that is good because attached to that, we can create a platform of 3 slime blocks with 3 other blocks attached to them, and that allows us to create an elevator platform floor. However, when you want to tile this design, you eventually encounter a bit of a problem because the pistons here cannot determine whether or not they are pushing a small amount of blocks or a large amount of blocks. Even if they are activated in tandem, it is not really possible to convince a piston that it is pushing anything less than the amount of blocks that are currently attached to the slime block above it. So if we ended up making a large floor of blocks here, let's just put some stone on the top here as an example. In order to make sure we activate both of these observers at the same time, I can also add some powered rail to a couple of blocks underneath those, activate that with a button like so that the powered rails both turn on at exactly the same time, and then we'll replace the observers back there facing downwards. So now, if I press this button, in theory, if pistons were smart enough to recognize that there was an adjacent piston taking half the load of this platform, the entire thing would ascend into the air like it did before. However, unfortunately, that is not the case, which means we need to take advantage of our new friends, the honey blocks. Honey blocks and slime blocks share a few of the same properties. They have sticky faces, and they can be used in redstone contraptions to move stuff around. But there are a few crucial differences, one of the major ones being that they do not stick to each other, and that means we can use honey blocks in a slime block flying machine contraption like this to tile alongside slime blocks and trick these pistons into moving a different set of blocks at exactly the same time. As long as the machine is triggered at the same time, everything will move in tandem and it'll look like the entire floor is moving by itself. The problem we have with this is that honey blocks have one fatal flaw, and that is that they do not conduct redstone power in the same way that slime blocks do. So the observer is still firing when I take that scaffolding away, and it's entering the honey block, but the honey block is not transmitting power to this piston next to it. So we will have to make a crucial couple of alterations to the way the honey block machine works in order to have it be the same function as the slime block flying machine over here. And it's actually fairly simple. All we're going to do is remove this observer, place another honey block down here, and have the observer fire directly into this piston. We're going to place the observer facing downwards so the output goes into the bottom of that piston, and now when I remove the oh yeah, that's that's absolutely going to build height, isn't it? But as you can see, after I removed that scaffolding, the observer activated the piston, and since then, this has acted just like our other flying machine did, with only the addition of another couple of blocks. Yep, there we go. What a view we have from up here. And now, once again, by activating the observer up here, the flying machine acts exactly the same way, and we can continue on our way down. We've only had to add one honey block and move the position of the observer, and this thing is still a one-wide tileable design that we can use alongside the slime block flying machine. All I will have to do is remove each of these slime blocks here and change them out for honey blocks, and then change where this observer is. Although the slime block flying machine will actually operate under exactly the same design. So to simplify things, we're only going to be using one extra slime block each time we create an arm of this. I kind of want to make the entire thing the same design as the honey block design. So we're going to move the observers over to this section here. And now with a quick redesign of the machine, we should be able to give this a go. I might add a second obsidian block up there though, because otherwise half of the flying machine is going to fly up and detach itself from the other half temporarily, which is not ideal. There we go, another obsidian block there should do the trick. Let's jump down from this, take out our scaffolding, and now if we attach a button to the side of this, activate both of the observers, there we go, the entire platform now moves in tandem, and in theory we could now tile this as wide as we like, because all we need to do is make sure that we alternate between honey and slime block versions of the design, and it can still carry 3 blocks on each direction. Not only that, but we could double that up in the opposite direction, just build the same thing mirrored on this side and have a 6-block wide platform. So that's kind of ideal for the platform that I want to carry us up to the surface of the mountain, the tip of the mountain there, where the ski route is going to start. So I'm going to take all this down because I basically need every redstone component I can get my hands on for this design, and after the break we're going to come back and build an elevator to the top of our mountain. Hey folks, welcome back. So I've now cleared out an area that I think is going to be appropriate for building our elevator to the peak of the mountain. We are going to probably build a 6x6 design, which seems ambitious, but I like the scale of it. I feel like that seems like enough room for players to stand around. If, you know, imagine a bunch of people wanting to get to the top of the mountain at once, I feel like that's going to be a sensible way of doing things. And we may have to clear out a little bit more of the area at the top there, but we are going to decorate around it so that you're not just turning up at the summit. You know, we're going to have an area around that where maybe there's going to be a little cafe and there's going to be a few sort of benches where people can sit down, strap on their skis, and then get to skiing. And outside of that, we might have a little bit more decoration thanks to the fact that this peak here is a little bit taller than this one. I didn't want the ski route to start on the highest mountain available because that just seems a little bit intimidating. So instead, we're going to start it on this one, and I think this area down here is where we're going to set up. So what I need to do is place down probably 6 rails on each side, and each of these is going to be connected by the same piece of redstone wire, so the same button turns on both rails at exactly the same time, meaning the entire platform ends up moving at once. Of course, that's what's going to be triggering our 6 observers that are facing downwards into those powered rails. We're not going to activate the rails yet. That's going to mean that these observers are dormant until they need to be. Now, on top of each of these observers, we're going to be placing our sticky pistons, and adjacent to the observer and sticky piston combos that we have here, we're going to be making each of these alternating slime blocks and honey blocks like so. Then on top of each of these pistons, we want to alternate the slime blocks and honey blocks. It's weird because honey blocks actually sink you down into them a little bit, so you can't always place a slime block right next to them like that. There we go. And adjacent to each of these, of course, we want some more sticky pistons facing downwards, which is going to be a little bit difficult to place at first, but once you've got one in there, you can just walk along the line and attach them to the sides like so. For now, on top of each of these, we're going to be placing some placeholder blocks. Eventually, these are going to be observers, but the observers are going to be facing in towards the center of the contraption, and I think we're going to want to place the other components here before we put the observers in, just to make sure we don't end up activating the observers and breaking the machine. So alongside these, we're going to be placing a row of redstone lamps, and these redstone lamps are going to be activating the observers that push the machine back downwards, because of course once we reach the summit, you're probably going to want to ski away, but somebody else is going to want to recall the lift down to the ground level. So either out of courtesy, you're going to step off the lift and then return it to the ground, or we need to have a call button down here. So there needs to be some method of activating all of these observers at once, and I think redstone lamps are going to be the way to do that. The redstone lamps are actually going to form part of the platform, but we can have 2 additional blocks attached to each of these arms of slime or honey blocks, and I think I'm going to go with dark oak for this one, because I like the fact that we're using a lot of dark oak in this area. It's quite a neat looking wood. Unfortunately, I don't have any of it in my wooden saplings chest, so I'll need to either grow a little bit more or find some locally. There we go. I had a little bit of it in my building supplies over at the lodge, so that is going to be one half of our platform done. 6 blocks wide and 3 blocks deep so far. Last thing we need to do is remove these cobblestone blocks and then place the observers in facing towards these redstone lamps, and the whole flying machine is good to go. Or one half of it is, at least. We need to go and build exactly the same thing mirrored on the opposite side now. But crucially, on the opposite side, we need to make sure that we alternate between the slime blocks and the honey blocks to make sure they don't form a complete bridge of one type of material or the other, because once again, you'll encounter that problem where the piston thinks it's trying to push the entire thing and not sharing the distribution of blocks between each of them. So we'll need to do it in a kind of sort of checkerboard pattern like this, just making sure that we alternate between honey and slime blocks and don't let 2 of the same type connect in the middle. But ultimately, this whole thing is just going to be built up the same on the opposite side. And there we go, the contraption is complete. We have a 6x6 elevator platform all built. The last things we need to do are to add a button that's going to activate both of these 2 sets of powered rails at once, and also something to stop it at the top, because otherwise this thing is going to fly up into the stratosphere, or at least to build height, and it will be kind of difficult to get it back down from there. And that is where these non-pushable blocks come in. I've broken another ender chest down so we have a bit more obsidian, and I think obsidian is going to be the most straightforward thing to do this with. We could always use, like I said, furnaces or something like that as well. Ultimately, it needs to be a block that can conduct redstone power though, because we're going to need to activate all of these redstone lamps at the same time, much the same as we activate the powered rails down here. That's what's going to trigger these observers to send the flying machine back down to Earth. So we need to get to the top of this mountain, and we need to make sure that we have the coordinates right so that we can end up building a ring of obsidian to stop the flying machine in its tracks. Okay, our bars of obsidian are in place. Of course, this is going to mean that the platform itself reduces down to a 4x6 footprint at the top there, because we need the obsidian to land directly on top of the redstone lamps, but I think that's going to be fine. And the last thing I'm doing here is just making sure we have a bit of clearance so none of the slime blocks or honey blocks pick up any other blocks on their way up, because that could ultimately mean that we end up sticking to those and the flying machine won't be able to pull all of those blocks up with it, which could lead to the machine breaking, which once again is not something we want to happen at this stage. And if you wanted to build this inside of a traditional structure, you might want to build some sort of elevator shaft, but then that becomes a bit of a creative challenge rather than a roadblock. You could end up building something out of blocks which will either not be pushable or not attached to slime and honey blocks. Things like leaves, glazed terracotta, obsidian, furnaces, droppers, whatever kind of stuff you want to put into it. Ultimately, we'll end up doing something like that here as well. I expect leaves will probably be the cheapest block with which to do that, but I think we can snazz it up a little bit. We can make it look a little special. But without further ado, we need to install an on button for this thing, and we can dress the whole thing up a little bit later. We'll probably do that in a separate episode, but now is the time for us to try activating this thing and seeing if the whole thing will work. So let's get a redstone line that will split off to each of these 2 sets of redstone rails, and I think it should be fine to do something like this, although we'll probably want a repeater here. We don't want to delay the signal to one versus the other, because that will end up with the machine splitting in half. So I think what we'll want to do is place a repeater somewhere here and then have some sort of activation mechanism coming from above. For now, we're just going to build a nice straightforward spiral with the redstone dust traveling down that, and we need to make sure that it's not attaching to the platform at any point. point, so the elevator button is actually going to have to be a block or two away, but I think maybe here is a good place to stop that. So we can have that on top of there, we can have an elevator button here, and I think once we press this, we're off! It works! We are ascending to the top of the mountain, my friends, on this fantastic new slime block and honey block elevator we've created. And of course, this whole thing is a little bit noisy and is going to take its sweet time getting here, but it's certainly going to save me on fireworks. Once we get to the top of the mountain, we should be able to make sure that this thing has enough clearance. If it doesn't, then we're going to be in a bit of a trouble, but I think I've cleared out enough area around this to make sure that the machine is going to stop without interfering with any of the surrounding blocks. It is getting a little bit dark, though, so I'm expecting to find some creepers at the top of the mountain waiting for me. And coming into dock with the obsidian, perfect, excellent, great stuff. We actually managed to do that flawlessly. And now all we need to do is run a redstone current from, say, a button on one side of this. Maybe we'll put the button over here, and then you run redstone dust along here, and then run redstone dust along there, have it activated by the same button. So, of course, we'll need to put a ring of stone around here. Actually, let's do that the other way around, thinking about it, because our skiers will want to head off on this side if they want to take the route down the mountain, and I think it's going to make more sense to have a button in the center here that will activate the obsidian on both sides. That should activate the redstone lamps underneath here, and the whole platform should descend. Let's give that a quick try now. Yes, it works. Excellent. I'm really, really happy with the way this came together, and hopefully this will be something that you folks can use however you want to tile this, however you want to design it in your own Minecraft worlds. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. My name has been Pixlriffs. Don't forget to leave a like on this episode if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye for now.